either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today, we make our second trip back to that fantastic land of Bollywood.
We do, with a slightly different style movie than we've covered before.
Yes, and not the very meme-worthy Bollywood movie.
No, this is a very new movie. It came out this year.
Yes.
And it came out on Netflix, I think worldwide, mostly.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty readily accessible as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so what we're reviewing today is Pagglait.
We're going to apologize now. We both watched this movie. Mine was English dubbed, but with accents still.
Oh, I didn't even know that was an option.
I had the subtitles on, and I had it English dubbed, because let's be real, I can't hear worth a shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I actively watched this whole movie, and I have watched multiple reviews of this movie from people who speak Hindi. I speak no Hindi. I apologize right now. I tried to look up everyone's name. I'm gonna butcher this so bad.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I will too. I mean, like you said, the one time I tried pronouncing anything Gaelic in front of you guys, you said it was the most German Gaelic you've ever heard.
It was... Which, I mean, that is a Gaelic, but it was not Irish Gaelic.
No.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to do our best, but, you know, most of this will unfortunately have to be in descriptive format, because some of these names are a wee bit hard for me to pronounce.
Yes. So before we really get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, in theme with this movie, we are having Pepsi Cola.
Pepsi Cola.
I will not lie. I have been a Coca-Cola person for so long, as a true Midwesterner is. I haven't had Pepsi. Surprisingly good. I will still be drinking Coca-Cola, though.
I don't really drink a lot of soda for the most part, but this is my friend Brittany's favorite.
It is good, but it does not qualify in the Diet Coke cult that I have willingly joined.
And here I was hoping we would not be talking about the Midwest at all this whole episode.
You brought a dark soda here. As a cult member of Coca-Cola, I am required to bring it up.
Okay. I will, actually, now that you brought it up, little sidebar before we get into it. Is it called pop or soda, or what is it here? Or at least in Missouri.
Missouri's kind of a weird state, because we have different sectors. I think most people call it soda. But some parts call it Coke. Coke is everything brown. Okay. And then if you're my dear sweet grandpa, it is Sody Pop.
Ah, so interesting.
I occasionally slip and call it Sody Pop, but let's be real, not very many people call it that. That's this very small pocket of people.
It is. And so, Pagglait, as we mentioned, it is a 2021 Indian Hindi language comedy drama that is about a widow dealing with the sudden loss of her husband, as well as family drama in discovering a secret her husband has kept.
Bum bum bum. And that was how it was advertised to us, and so we picked it thinking, okay, well, we haven't really done a drama recently.
Yeah.
And it sounded like a Bollywood film that, you know, drama's pretty popular subject matter. Yeah. But it also didn't advertise itself as like, because when I went to look up the music sounded great. Couldn't find any dance moves for it, which is a little unusual. Becoming less unusual now with the newer ones, at least the ones available on Netflix.
Yeah.
So we picked it thinking, okay, this will be a little bit of an outlier. Yeah,
just a little bit. And partly because we kind of screwed the pooch a little bit and didn't pick it out until like 2 weeks ago. So
very true, but also means that you can watch it along with us.
Yes, exactly. So it is written and directed by Umesh Beast, and it stars Sanya Malhotra, Shaini Gupta, and Shiba Chadha.
I think so.
I hope so. I really hope so.
I do too, because the acting in this was surprisingly really good.
Yeah.
Like, and not just, I say surprisingly because normally I'm used to the main actor or actress putting on a really good show, and then the side characters just kind of being there.
Yeah.
All of the side characters in this put on a great show.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, me going into it, one, not really knowing anything about it, I was just curious to see where it was going to go. Just because I'm not as versed in Bollywood movies as you are.
Yes.
I watch maybe a couple a year, and it always ends up being a horror one because I'm like, oh, that movie sounds interesting for my 31 Days of Halloween, so.
Yeah, and I like Bollywood. I try to pick it up every now and then. It's kind of like a side hobby of movies that I like to watch, but I definitely wouldn't call myself like super like diversely into it. I end up in the same genre, kind of like how you do, but mine end up in the action romance section of Bollywood.
Yeah, I feel you there because I finally broke my Japanese rut of buying from Criterion, so. But that's been transferred kind of to Arrow now, so that's another rabbit hole. But
so I was pleasantly surprised that this one it was a drama movie, but the drama wasn't this outlandish, over the top drama that a lot of people created for themselves. It was very real family problem drama. Yeah,
it was rooted in reality, and I think that was one of the things that made it a little different from the get-go. Is that it just didn't follow what we expect a Bollywood movie to be.
Yeah.
But also still kept with some of the same tropes.
Definitely had some of the same, like, outline bases, which I liked a lot. But I don't know. It kind of felt to me like a slice of life anime does, where it's a little bit more magical as far as, like, it's all from one person's point of view, and you're definitely not getting a realistic interpretation of what is going on. You're getting a movie version of it. Yeah. But it feels very, like, down to earth and, like, realistic portrayal of what's happening and, like, the characters' feelings. It's not an over-the-top thing.
Yeah, it's not like the last one we did where it's a guy who has absolutely no pain and is a shitty kung fu fighter.
Yeah, this is the other end of that.
Yes, exactly. On the other extreme. Or, actually, I don't know. This
is a middle-of-the-road movie, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I completely agree on that. And so before we dive into the movie, I do want to mention that this is going to be structured a little bit differently than how we normally do the scene-for-scene breakdown, just because this one goes back and forth between so many things constantly.
There's a lot happening.
There's a lot of whiplash.
Honestly, didn't mind the whiplash in this one too much because of how many characters there are. It was a little jarring, but also, like, it was fine, and I'll get into why later.
It made me think of a little bit of, like, season 3 of Bleach when they get out of the Soul Society, and you're introduced to, like, 20 different characters, plus the old characters are coming back, and then a couple that were, like, bit parts.
Yeah, it has that.
Yeah, exactly. So, Pagglait.
Yes.
It opens on a shot of Indian temples, city views, as our title card appears.
Yes.
And I looked up the meaning of this name. According to BollyMeaning.com.
Okay.
It means going crazy and comes from the word pagal, which is a casual and offensive way to call someone crazy.
Okay, that's kind of what I found too. I just Google translated though.
I am not that smart. But in this opening, we do have this weird close-up of a dude's ass on a bike.
Yeah, there's not a lot of weird shots in this movie.
Yeah.
This one was I mean, well, it wasn't super memorable, so I guess it wasn't too bad, but yeah, a little weird. I
just thought it was just jarring from the city views to that.
Yeah, it was, especially because the city views were really nicely shot.
Yeah, but I do have something to say to that. If it was a chick on the bike, though, normally that would draw a little bit more attention. But I think that's maybe why it was jarring, is because normally you don't get that kind of close up on a guy.
That's true. I think as anime watchers, I've been desensitized to obnoxious butt shots over the years.
Yeah,
I suffered through the 90s weird camera angle problem. So
weird camera angle, and even if the skirt was that short, you wouldn't be able to see the entire...
I'm thinking Yu Hakusho, where there's just whole butts in the scene. Just guy butt hanging out in the middle of the shot.
Goku's butt's in a lot of Dragon Ball, too.
Goku's butt is, for some reason, Force-centered on the screen.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. And so he delivers his load to a building that the front says Shanti Kunj, since like I wrote the note down in my notes, but I didn't actually transfer it to my computer. But I did actually look this one up, and I might be completely off base, but the literal translation means peace key.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, equivalent of live, laugh, love above your house. Why not?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh.
And then there's also a religious sect called Shanti Kunj, but it's all one word instead of like the two. So
okay, yeah, I don't know.
I didn't go too far into that since I felt it probably had no relations, and I already went down a handful of rabbit holes for this movie.
Yeah,
so.
there was a lot of learning to do for this one.
Yes. And so from here, from the street scene, we cut to we're introduced to a variety of characters.
Oh boy, and we are introduced hot and fast.
Yes. First, we're introduced to a father and his son having the son's head shaved while his friend is cracking jokes at him.
Yeah, I mean,
a mother on the phone spreading the news about while her child bugs her about his toothpaste, being very specific and a little long-winded about it.
This child, I don't hate most of the characters, even the like obnoxious aunties and uncles in this movie. This child, though, was inches from being yeeted off the roof in this movie.
Yeah, he's
bitching about his toothpaste is this character's defining moment.
Yeah.
He is so full of himself.
There's a couple other moments with him, but he's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's this weird focus on him, too, that I think makes him an odd character, is instead of like...
Okay, but I have kind of a theory about this, because I watched several reviews of people who grew up in India and speak Hindi and watched this movie from their standpoint. And a lot of the women who watched this movie and reviewed it mentioned that they appreciated that the movie acknowledged that their world is a male-centered world.
Yes.
And this little boy does a really nice job of, like, reminding the audience of that.
Okay. Cultural differences that I did a little bit of digging into, but that wasn't one thing I picked up on.
Yeah, and so, like, while it's not a super in-your-face, he's mostly just an annoying brat kid, it, like, kind of starts setting the tone, especially for the first half of the movie.
Okay.
This is a guy-run house, and while the women are probably in charge, let's be real, because the uncles don't know what they're doing.
No.
It's, like, it is still a guys-run house to the point where, like, that's what's expected.
Yeah.
That's just the cultural norm.
Okay. That makes a little bit more sense. And at the same time, more family members gather at the house. And we learn that the widow has shut herself away. So I like this opening.
I do too.
But I still think it's also a bit odd.
Okay.
We have the just kind of normative, almost penitive shots of like the city and the temples. But then we have like this odd little. It's an odd little bit of comedy of his friend like poking fun at him getting his head shaved. But it's also quickly stifled.
Yeah.
But,
I think this movie is meant to be a dark comedy.
Yeah.
But it's not dark comedy in American style.
No, it's not in Bruges.
We're a little bit more blunt with our dark comedy. This one is much more like subtle teasing.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it feels to me watching it. But like I can see where a lot of people were coming from when they said like it pushes the line of comedy with a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
At least for them.
Okay. I can see that a little bit more now. But the one thing I do like is that even with that little initial comedy, stifling it quickly establishes that we are dealing with a serious subject.
Yes.
And not only that, but loss and a sudden loss. And we also are told that the person who died was in their late 20s and was only married for 5 months. So like,
yeah, like this happened hard and fast.
Like,
everybody's hurt.
Yeah, in like 5 minutes this is all explained to us.
I also kind of like that the husband and son who we learn is passed away. We get his name. His parents clearly see him as a whole person, and it is mentioned, but the movie's not from their point of view.
No.
The movie's from the widow's point of view, and she didn't really know him.
Yeah.
And so we don't know how he died.
Well, we don't know this yet. We just think that, as us as a Western audience is like, they must have been madly in love, and so
or like were engaged for a while, or at least knew each other a while.
Yeah.
But
on top of that, not only does it establish it's a serious movie, but it quickly goes through everyone is dealing with this loss differently.
Oh, yeah, you can... And I like that, too. I like that we've got the whole family in one house to deal with this. Because it also helps raise those tensions. Because from the get-go, some of the aunts and cousins are coming in, and they're making a mess of the house. Some people are coming in, and they have declared they do not like this thing or that thing.
Yeah.
The little boy is upset that his toothpaste is not the right toothpaste. And it's... A lot of people are at the same time trying to grieve.
Yeah. No, there's a lot going on.
It is full chaos.
Yeah.
It is Home Alone at Christmas chaos, but sad.
Yep. And as well as after getting introduced to 20 different characters, the widow's parents arrive.
Yeah.
And immediately the widow is acting off. And as we mentioned before, this is going to be a rare movie where I don't call the characters by their names, and I call them more so by their familial roles. Because there is a lot of characters, a lot of names, and it's a lot to keep track of. And
there's a lot of people who, they're side characters, but they're important side characters.
Yeah, and it's just easier for this one how to track how people are related to each other. And there's a lot of confusion when even Wikipedia adds to the description of each character's name their familial role.
And to kind of go off the, like, this film plays really heavily off of family roles and who's related to who and that whole arc really heavily, because a lot of the characters, instead of saying names, they will call each other auntie, mother-in-law, uncle, brother, brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Like, names are used quite frequently, but titles are used just as much, and it is a constant reminder throughout the movie that, like, this is a whole family, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you were, like, super close with them.
Yeah, no, exactly. So also in this scene, and here's where some of the cultural differences really started hitting me a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. First off, the widow says that she would like some Pepsi over tea, but gets funny looks. And that was the weird thing for me, because for starters, I didn't realize a lot of what was going on, and I'll get into some of it a little bit more, but the first thing that kind of threw me off was a little bit about the soda. And I do apologize if I get anything culturally wrong.
We tried.
Yeah, I did a bit of research on this, but some of the resources are a little bit limited. But I did a little digging. And so the history of soda in India is actually a little bit more complex.
The history of soda in general is out there.
And might be better fitted for a different type of episode.
I think so.
But I learned the short story of it. India kicked out Coca-Cola.
Yes, they did.
And promoted their own home brewed sodas.
Yes.
And then once they let foreign sodas start coming back in, Pepsi was the one who started making it into the market, and they are currently the third best-selling drink in India, and also outsells Coca-Cola and quite a few other places that I wasn't aware of, including big parts of Canada.
There you go. Learn something new.
Yeah, exactly. So, after this, we do have a small cut to the dude who is having his head shaved be a little bit pissy as his dad explains the morning rituals, as he cannot drink, touch tobacco, and must have one meal a day without turmeric, garlic, or onions.
Which, for Indian cuisine, that's limiting.
Kind of. I mean,
garlic is in everything, man.
Yeah, I know, but like, those are 3 things instead of like the last Indian dish I made had like 20 different spices I had to throw into it.
Very true.
Yeah. And so here's where I did a little bit of digging into the morning practices of Hinduism, because you and I both have a morbid curiosity towards a lot of things.
We do. I love to know how other people celebrate death, I guess. Memorize.
How they deal with death and the ritual surrounding it.
There we go. That one.
That's it. So what I learned is that the cremation is normally done within 24 hours after death.
Okay.
And this does tie into later on in the movie because there's some other things that are brought up.
Yes.
The mourning period ranges between 10 and 13 days, but in the initial 13 days, the family will primarily stay home and they do not attend social functions not associated with the funeral. But I guess work is kind of a gray area depending on your dedication and financial obligations.
Yeah, I mean, work is work everywhere, unfortunately.
Yep. And as well, there are some of the articles I was reading mentioned that sweets are not to be consumed as well. So that explains the Pepsi.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, I remember reading some, like, Western ones where, like, the idea of bland food or, like, morning food, like, that one made sense to me a little bit, especially since, like, this household, I think they mentioned at one point that they have, like, a caterer, they have someone cooking for them for this whole event, and so, like, for asking for something on top of what that person's already made. Yeah,
because, later on, it's pointed out that she's not eating their food.
Yeah.
It's specifically because when her parents come, it's the neighbor, the one who was making fun of the guy getting his head shaved, the brother-in-law. And he's like, oh, you're not eating. Like, he takes a look down and then realizing, oh,
this isn't what you want. Gotcha.
Yeah, basically. And so, I couldn't find anything specifically in regards to, like, the turmeric, garlic, and onion, so I guess it's just region to region based that...
That's very possible.
It's not specified. But then on the 13th day, there's a ceremony called Purta Karma.
Okay.
That the family performs to release the soul for reincarnation.
Okay.
And that's just a quick rundown of the things I ran through. There's a lot more to it.
And this movie kind of implies that, like, this family takes this ceremony and its formalities very seriously. The father spends a lot of this movie harping on what we learn is the brother.
Yeah.
All of the steps that this guy has to take, and not just him, the whole family has to participate. They make kind of a fuss over, like, they really can't afford some of this, but we're gonna do it because this is how it's done. So, like, does everyone do all of this? I have no idea, but the movie makes it sound like they're going full on. They're going all in.
Yeah, I mean, it's someone that they genuinely loved.
Yes, and they're gonna go full tradition.
Yeah, and so, after this little awkward exchange of the brother-in-law, the widow's been watching them, and they notice her. But I like this part because it's definitely it makes her feel like a stranger in the house. And kind of in return, when her parents are telling her that they are planning to stay, she's also projecting her feeling of not belonging on her parents. She doesn't want them to be here either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, after this little bit, more family arrives, and there is so much gossip.
Oh man, the tongues are wagging.
Oh yeah, they're all talking about, like, oh, this person's doing this person's doing that. And we still haven't even really gotten into the family drama yet.
No, this is just, their family is always at a constant level of drama.
Yep. And in the middle of this, their doorbell rings.
I love their doorbell.
And
it plays a song from a movie, and it is not a quote-unquote funeral appropriate song.
Is it not?
It was a, like, happy, upbeat song.
Yeah.
As opposed to being ding-dong.
Dun, dun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the equivalent of having, like, rolling up to a funeral and your horn plays the cucaracha. Like, funny sometimes, maybe not for a funeral.
I mean, actually, I just had I had a stupid thought because I have always thought it'd be a great retirement job to be a groundskeeper for a cemetery. And it'd be awful if you had a lawnmower with a horn that played the cucaracha.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it gave me similar vibes where, like, the younger people in the family do not seem super upset. The older people in the family are horrified. How dare. Yeah.
And this doorbell introduces the widow's friend.
Yes.
And we learned that the reason the widow has been... And this is where we actually learned that the widow has been asking for a variety of things because she is not eating and is kind of trying to get around the mourning rituals.
Yeah. I mean, this is the start of, like, me as the audience going, that 5 months must have been short.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, newlywed sadness. This was I barely knew you.
Yeah, because she hasn't been confronted yet.
No.
But this, like...
But the whispers of the family, some of them are like, oh, she's just so sad. Some of them even accuse her of having PTSD with, like, no evidence. They're just, like, letting things go.
That's actually the next part, because we have a quick cut to the family having a meal and discussing what to do now that they have a widowed daughter-in-law living with them.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes up that, oh, she's been in her room this whole time. She must be so in mourning. And
like,
then
she's so sad, and she's scrolling on her phone on her bed, like, commenting on these posts being cookie cutter.
Yeah, and it's from the uncle who knows, like, English literature. That's, like, his weird little obsession.
Yes, that is his passion.
Yeah, and so that's where the PTSD comes from.
Yes, he's done some reading, and he is diagnosing her with no medical license.
Yes. And so, back in the widow's room, her friend confronts her now about why she's acting weird, like nothing's happened. Mm-hmm. And the widow, in kind of a early dark turn, refers to her nothingness as the opposite of her childhood pet dog dying.
Yes, where she admits that, like, she knows she should be sad, but she doesn't feel anything for this.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's... I don't know. The pacing of this movie is hit and miss. There are parts where it drags a little bit, and then parts where, like, the very beginning, even up till now, like, the first 30, or probably the first act of the movie is a lot of just introducing everyone, and it's so fast because you're learning everyone's roles, what they're doing and stuff.
The stage setting happens hot and fast because there's a lot of stage.
Oh yeah, there's so much. And so from this we also cut to the evening where the family is burning oils in a clay jar outside the house as the widow's mom comes in to burn some spices. Because she has been jinxed by the evil eye.
Her mom is not just a little bit superstitious. Her mom is a lot of bit superstitious.
Yes. And this is an interesting part too, because it's also establishing that the widow, her views of the world are different than the hyper-traditional views her mom grew up or presented to her as a child, talking about, like, oh, well, when I fell off my bike when I was a kid, you said my feet were cursed, so you gave me a jade ring and got rid of my new bike.
Yeah, as opposed to, like,
teaching me how to ride a bike.
Yeah, and one of my few gripes of this movie is her character at times feels really hollow. Mm-hmm. I like this intro to her mom and her mom and her's interaction because it does kind of help fill her out a little bit more as a character, because her mom clearly loves her a lot. Her mom goes through the whole charade, even comes to stay with the family to be with her daughter through this horrible time. But her mom clearly has an idea of what would make her daughter happy. Yeah. And it's not just been like a recent thing. Like, the daughter makes it very clear that this has been going on for as long as she can remember, and for as long as she can remember, she has been telling her mother no. Yep.
And it's kind of unfortunate too, because this is really also kind of the ending scene with her mother. Yeah. And her father. Like, they show up a couple times later in the movie.
They're in the background, and to be honest with you, I think this scene is meant to set them up, because we do have a lot of other characters going on, and truthfully, they take up most of the time. Yeah. So, when we do see her mom is more important, at least character-wise, than her dad is, but they're both together. And while they're both not actively stirring the pot, they clearly annoy everyone else in the house. Yeah,
just them being there. Because, one, the daughter-in-law is not wanted, and they're not wanted on top of it.
Yeah. This wasn't like, oh my gosh, my daughter-in-law, who I love very dearly and have known for a long time. This is, oh yes, my husband's wife.
Yeah, yeah. And so, this is also another little sidebar rabbit hole I went through. In Hindu, the evil eye is also called the Maljo. And there are a variety of rituals called the Jahare.
Okay.
I butchered that one. To remedy the Maljo. But what I believe the mother is doing is another ritual called Oche. And based on the description of what I could find, this seemed most accurate to it.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, I could not find actual footage or actual descriptions, because it seems like it varies from like region to region, guru to guru.
Yeah, I mean that's how these things go.
Yeah, it makes me think of a lot of the because I'm going through some cult documentaries and last podcast on the left covering of cults, and it's a lot of it reminds me of a lot of those like faith healings where like, yeah, they all kind of have a core belief system, but everyone does it drastically different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that this scene, her mother goes not just a little bit overboard and annoys her, she goes so far overboard that they get smoked out of their own room. Well, it's now too stinky to be in there, and her father tries to like wave it off, not as the mom's doing, but like, oh, it's those boys in the alleyway burning tires.
No, it's not even that. So it's one, she ropes her friend into it, and the friend just goes along with it.
Oh, her poor friend.
Because the ritual is interrupted also by the mother-in-law asking for documentaries. Or...
Documentaries.
Yes. She's
documents.
Asking for documents for the morning.
Yes.
But it's them who notice the coughing and like the smell, and it's the friend who's like, oh, it's the kids in the street burning tires.
Yeah, it's totally not her weird mom doing rituals in the room.
But despite how a little bit over the top a little bit of the scene is, I enjoy it because it is this weird and interesting mashing of traditional rituals, mourning, modern day stuff, and like the modern day boring paperwork stuff associated with death. And it's just this weird amalgamation of that.
I will say, I really did like how well this movie did death. Especially, like, American films have a really terrible time, like, properly showing a family going through that process. Because, yes, the mourning is obviously emotionally the center star for a movie. Yeah. But there's a lot of paperwork that everyone has to do. And the bills aren't just going to stop because somebody died.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no,
So I like that this movie tried to cover, like, a lot of aspects. They tried to cover the ritualistic portion. They tried to cover a lot of the family members dealing with this loss. And then they also had to spend time addressing the fact that, like, the son, as we learn, was the only one making money for this house.
Yeah, that's quite a bit later on, though, too.
Yeah,
so,
but it's hinted at from the start.
Yeah, it's a nice layering of things.
It really is, because when she goes to go find this paperwork, we get to see the inside of his closet. And this is kind of the only, like, visual understanding we have for this guy. Yeah. Because we don't have any pictures of him either in the movie. At least none that I remember.
I think there are, but they're not, like, a focus. Because that's one of the things I learned is a lot of times they'll have pictures of their of the deceased hanging up and at the rituals and whatnot. But we do also get a little bit of a cut that the father goes up to the roof to have a drink and catches the son smoking, the shaved head son, and both are breaking the rules.
They need to break the rules, and they kind of have this, like, bro camaraderie, like, ugh, it's hard to be doing this, we keep each other's secret, pinky promise.
Or not even that, it's just basically the dad being like, don't you do that again. And the son, like, as he's walking off, defiantly taking, like, that one last drag of his cigarette and putting it out.
Like, these were, as far as both of them are concerned, both actions without consequences this one time.
Yeah. Does it also stop the dad from drinking? Nope.
No.
Not in the least.
No.
Yeah. And so now we have a little bit of the family friend taking the widow's friend to go get some real food.
Yes.
While the widow is now checking through the closet and finds the picture of another woman. And we get our first little musical number. And so here, I know in Bollywood we've talked about how films have like a set number of musicals.
Oh yeah.
And this one there are 3.
Yes, there are.
But these musical numbers kind of remind me of more of like how Brave is a musical, but not. Brave's not a musical, but it's got those musical feelings to it.
Yes. So we get 3 distinct sections of music. When the music starts, the speaking parts are over. It is all visuals and action over the music, and the music is the focal point. Yeah.
Well, and this one, it breaks out a little bit too, because we also have a small bit where the parents are considering taking her back because her parents were at the meal.
Yes.
But the father seems like he can't get his shit together.
Yeah, he's struggling hard.
And on top of that, they already have 2 unmarried daughters at home.
Yes, and the widow makes it clear, and she makes it like astonishingly clear later on in the film, but when she's talking to her friend, she mentions several different ways that like her and her sisters being married off is kind of all her mom ever wanted. Mm-hmm. Like, this wasn't like a for your benefit. This was all right, off you go.
It's like, we had too many kids. We need to get you out of here.
Yes. You are the daughter. Bye-bye.
Peace.
And it clearly bothers her a little bit, but it didn't bother her a lot until now, where she's in this awkward position of being an unwanted daughter for both families.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, actually, yeah, that is a really good point. Because they do a very good job of pointing out at the very beginning of the film that she's unwanted in the, or it's not that she's unwanted, they're conflicted on what to do.
She feels like, instead of being a grown woman capable of handling herself and being part of this discussion, she feels like they're talking about a 5-year-old child.
Yeah.
Like, oh, man, we've got to watch Kitty for the weekend.
It's very much the old-timey, women are property kind of feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does have that, but it has it in a, like, much more realistic and much more modern version of it, as opposed to like, oh no, they are not property, but we have to do what's best for them. We are the uncles, we are the fathers, we should know.
Yeah.
That's how this movie portrays it, and I like that a lot because it really opens a nice avenue to see her mentally struggle with what she should do with the family. Because for especially the first act, we get to see how she's not just being treated like this now. This is kind of how she's always lived her life.
Yeah.
She's just kind of been shuffled along.
And, I mean, that is part of, from my understanding, I know things are changing, and
oh, sure.
I know very little. I know that India still has a high caste system, and that, or a strictly followed caste system, and that the women very much so are kind of
oh, sure. And
are treated in a very old school manner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, directly or not, like, this is something that, like, women all across the world will recognize. Even if you feel like you have more control than her, it is easy to just be shuffled through your life and have people be like, you should do this. And you go, okay. And then, what if you do this? Okay. Sort of, she's been shuffled around for so long, and granted, it's in this context, it's in this culture, but she's always been, you know, this is how her life is going, and it was going fine. Maybe not how she envisioned it, but maybe she didn't stop to think about it. And that's kind of where this movie's at right now. She's finally made a choice. And it's kind of the first small choice. Yeah. She's decided that she's going to go get street food.
Before that, there is actually a little bit important part before that. Mm-hmm. So we do cut to the morning where people are getting ready to carry out the burial rites.
Yes.
And everything seems to still be in chaos as more relatives arrive. And we get a lot more chaos. And
oh, man.
And this is where, like, the non-important family drama kind of is, but it also brings up that the family she's in is not the perfect family.
No.
But also the brother who does finally show up it's a question about why his motives are there.
Yes, from the get-go.
Yes. And so, as you mentioned, the widow is deciding what she's going to do. She's decided... This is more so where she decides to... her next move. Yes. She's going to investigate the woman in the photograph that fell out from her husband's belongings.
And I do like that in the movie they give her time to pause to try and, like, struggle with whether or not she should bring it up to his parents. Should she bring it up to her mom? Should she bring it up to her best friend? Should she just not say anything?
Yeah.
I like that struggle because it does kind of help make her feel like this is the first real, like, important step for her.
Yeah. Yeah, because at this point, she is now, again, well, not even now, she's still sneaking around the rituals.
Oh, for sure.
Because she has decided to go out and get Golgappas.
Yes. Which I don't know much about, but they look delicious.
Well, she lies to get out of the house, and that's the next thing, is she lies, actually everything she's lying about is food-oriented so far.
A girl after my own heart.
I guess. I don't know.
White mush or spicy chips? I also would pick the spicy chips.
What is... Oh, the food from the plate earlier. I was gonna ask if white mush was some Midwestern thing I wasn't aware of.
They
The Midwestern morning food. We eat bland white mush.
I mean, that's just oatmeal or cream of wheat, but...
Cream of wheat is delicious.
It is delicious.
But this is where my nerdiness came in.
Uh-huh.
I did actually look up what Golgappa is.
Okay.
They are also known as pan puri,
Okay.
fuchka, and it is a street food and snack that is made out of hollowed out and deep fried crisp flatbread called a puri that is filled with a mixture of flavored water known as imli pani.
Okay.
And then is filled with tamarind chutney, chili powder, chaat masala, potato masho, onions, or chickpeas.
That sounds amazing.
It sounds awesome.
That sounds miles better than bland white mush.
Yes. And unfortunately, what I've learned a lot about street food is, as easy as some of it looks, you need special equipment for a lot of it.
Or years of skills.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Breakfast toast, I'm looking at you. And so, in the meantime, while she's doing this, we cut to the men being harassed at the Ganges.
Yeah.
For bringing the ashes and spraying them into the river.
I think, from what I understand, because I've had friends and family who've been to India, and it's less of harassment and more of sales pitching. Like when you got yelled at in New York City to buy a hat, it's that, but more aggressive.
Yeah.
They're being, like, granted, I couldn't catch what, but something's trying to be sold. Some sort of money is attempting to be exchanged. I don't know what. But somebody's selling something.
You have to pay someone to perform the rituals and bring you out to the river.
Yes.
That's the big thing.
All of these guys, like, panic attacking crowd in this car, being like, banging on the windows. It's not meant to be aggressive. It's meant to be like, hey, pick me. I would like to chauffeur your car. Pick me. But they already have somebody.
It is aggressive.
No, it is aggressive, but it's normal aggressive.
Okay.
This is kind of just how things be.
Yeah, and there's that weird moment of, like, they're like, oh, is it your mother? Is it this person? He's like, it's my son. And there's that weird...
There's a reverence for a young death.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad, but it also feels a little bit over the top from the sales vendor side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When everyone goes silent and it's like, oh, shit, we shouldn't have said that. It's like...
Yeah. I do think that this movie is trying its best to really hammer home that this was, like, a sudden death of a young person, which weighs more heavily on their hearts. No one wants to lose a son. Yeah, exactly.
But one thing I do like, and this is where it starts in this movie, is the nice parallel shots.
Oh, yeah.
Between, specifically this one of them performing the rituals and the widow breaking the rituals.
Yes. The cinematography of this is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. This is where the movie really shines. Because for the most part, it's just a lot of...
It's drama.
It's drama, normal shots. There's nothing... I would say...
Nothing groundbreaking.
Stand out.
Yeah. But these parallel shots and then a couple of the chosen lighting shots.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's all I also think it's quite nice too, because instead of like doing these great cinematic shots for honestly a relatively sad but mundane subject.
Yes.
But it just is a nice pairing to it.
It really is.
Yeah.
It also really helps retie everyone together instead of, because we do have a lot of whiplash because there's a lot of people to keep track of in this movie.
Yeah.
But when they do these more artsy scenes with where they're cutting through to everyone, it kind of helps slow down that whiplash of where everyone is, who's this, why are we here, and kind of reties everyone's story back together. Really nice. Yeah, because, and also at the same time, at this part, we have a story being told the men as they're going out on the Ganges that, I'm saying that wrong. Fuck, I don't know how to say it. I don't have to say it again later on in this episode. So, anyway, while they're on the giant river, the Mississippi of India. Sure.
There's this parallel story of what the guru is saying to them about purifying the soul and the spirit. That's paralleling the story that the widow's making up in her head about the woman in the photograph. Yes. And I like that this story is given to the men of the family. And just the upper men of the family. It's just the uncles and the son. And they're being told, like, why we're doing all of this. This is why we're doing it. Yep. It's for him. It's for his soul. This is when we do things. And it's helping solidify why those rituals are important. Yeah. And at the same time, she's not getting told this story. So she's coming up with a parallel story, but it's got a twist. She is, but she's seeing it in parts. Because the next part, she comes home, and the brother-in-law is seemingly a changed man. I do like this part because he is now retelling the story he just got told. Yeah. But the way he's retelling it is he's telling it like he has always known this knowledge. Here's what it is. It's like that friend who comes back from like a festival or something where they were stoned out of their mind. Yes, and they have had a moment. Yeah, but it's also kind of nice too because it's this moment where the brother is talking about, the brother's saying like, hey, at first I thought these rituals and like I was pissy about this. He was the favorite brother. If I had died, he wouldn't have had to do this. But it's showing his growth his little growth as a character that he is now understanding of the importance and that he understands his role much better in all of this. Yes. And I also like that they put the growth for the brother here because while he is not a, like, super strong side character, the uncles appear a lot more than he does, the aunties appear a lot more than he does, he is a very important character. And if he hadn't had that growing moment, things that he does later wouldn't have had the weight. Yeah. No. So, I like that he's done this. I do think it's hilarious, though, that he has spent... Like, he has become such a changed person that now he is preaching the word that he has just learned 30 minutes ago. Yeah. I mean... I appreciate the change. I appreciate the growth. Maybe we pump the brakes a little. I feel him a little bit there because I know I have gone on binges about movies. Oh, for sure. We have all been this person. Yes. It just absolutely cracks me up because the people he is telling this to isn't necessarily like the young kids. It's the adult women who probably already know this story. Yeah, oh yeah. That is a good point. I didn't think of that. Like they're being very polite and letting him go on, but they're in the background doing things. Which is kind of nice because they're also being a bit respectful. It's kind of like they're letting him have his moment. Yeah, it's like being an old fan of something and finding a new fan who's like, oh yeah, this part, and you're just like, yeah, that's really like, cool. Yeah. Have you gotten to the part where the dog and the little girl, have you met them yet? Oh, I actually sent that gift to Sugi today. Oh, a friend who just got into Full Metal. Have you met Nina yet? Don't you love her? Isn't she the cutest? Hope nothing happens. God, another heartbreaking part of the show. And so, the widow is still pissed off. Oh, yeah. But... This is a lot of emotions for one lady to take in. Yeah, because we also have another little bit of parallels between her getting pissy, starting to, where she was going to throw stuff around, but ends up going out to water her garden. Yes. As it cuts between her doing that, and the brother-in-law refilling the oil lamp, where he's taking over the role. He's taking over fully the roles of the ritual.
They're both having time to reflect, just over different things.
Which is also nice, too, because it's also a transition of him kind of transitioning into his brother's role.
Yes, and I also like her because her taking the time, instead of losing her temper, she's taking the time to think more deeply about what to do, because we've seen her have a lot of anxiety up until this point about what to do with this information that her husband might have been cheating on her. And so she's taking the time to not necessarily panic about who to ask, but to think about it herself. Yeah. Which I like a lot. We don't get that a whole lot, especially with women protagonists. It's usually like, and the next day they did the thing. I like that. While it does slow the movie down, I like that they give her time to really think about what she's doing. Yeah, no, that's quite a good part. And point to that too. Because on top of that, she does have a little bit of a more, what's the right word? Thoughtful moment. Because after this, the brother-in-law has come up to say, hey, there's an obituary we need to write. And it's not even, hey, there's an obituary we need to write. He comes up to her knowing that she is better at writing than him. English, specifically. Specifically English, which is apparently how they'd like to send out the obituary, presumably so that more people can read it. Mm-hmm. And so he's trying to work through it with her, and she's quickly getting frustrated that he can't spell things quickly. Yeah. All of the words he has picked are wrong. He kind of second guesses her when she tells him, like, use beloved, don't use this one. He's like, well, beloved's for girls. Yeah. And she's like, no, it's anybody can be beloved. Yeah. And so finally she just is like, you know what, let me do it. Just give it to me. You're just writing what I'm saying anyway. Yeah, but it also is a development on her part as well, or her as a character, because it's also establishing that she's a little bit too educated to just be a house person. A house mom. Yeah. Or not too educated, because my mom is extremely educated and she wanted to be a house mom. But she doesn't have the personality to be a house person. She's got too much going on. She needs to be doing something. She is very much the stereotypical, I'm a strong woman who ain't need no man. And now she doesn't have no man. But she was kind of forced to have a man. Yeah. Yeah. They spend more time later on, but this is kind of the start of them hinting that, like, she's not just educated, she's highly educated. Yeah. She has a high-level degree, she went to a really good school, she graduated really well in her class. And yeah, because that's another thing, too, because that earlier when her mom was doing the ritual, she was saying, well, you did graduate from school, so my rituals did work. You got a husband who is making 70,000 baht a month. Yeah, and her mom sent her to school to get that MRS, and she went to school to get a master's degree. Yeah, exactly. But from this part, we have a weird little side plot. Yeah, I don't... It's in the movie. Cousin romance. The two younger cousins who were the one bugging about the toothbrush and the Greedy brothers' daughter. Yes. Have kind of come together. He's trying to be all suave and cutesy. And he's trying to be a fancy man. Yeah. And she has none of it. Yeah, it's just a weird moment that goes I feel like literally nowhere. It really does go nowhere. I feel like this is supposed to kind of show a moment of, like, the next generation will have more to offer the world. He's, like, kind of showing the old way he is this suave guy. He's expecting her to just be impressed with him for breathing hard enough. And she's like, no, I'm better than this, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can't be friends. Yeah, or, you know what? Just this once. We'll see where it goes kind of thing. Yeah. Side note, he does mention that they are distant cousins. Yes, I, as a Midwesterner, have a hearty chuckle at this joke. So I actually did a little digging on this because it was a little off-putting for me as well. Cousin marriage in India, from what I have read, is dependent from region to region, as well as culturally religious, as well as cultural and religious customs, and greatly varies because they take all of that into consideration. It's just not like in a law where, like,
you can't marry your first or second cousins, but you can marry your third cousins.
Yes. It also kind of helps reiterate, like, how messy this family is. There's a lot of people who show up that get called cousin. We have no idea how these people are related. Like, some of them are told, like, oh, this is my brother, this is my brother's son.
Yeah.
And then some people are just showing up to the house and they're like, oh, auntie. And you're like, whose sister is this? And they're like, nobody's.
Well, I think it's also kind of in the way, in, like, Korean films and dramas, they refer to each other as auntie and uncle.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And also, like, it kind of goes to show that, like, just because you have, like, a distant cousin or a more distant aunt or uncle, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to show up to things.
Yeah.
Everybody shows up no matter how far down the tree you are.
Yeah. Also, side note, the human race is actually hella inbred the more you start thinking about it. So,
are you English? You inbred.
Habsburg jaw.
Oh, man. I mean, that's a rabbit hole for a different day.
That is a completely different rabbit hole. And so from here we cut to some of the late husband's colleagues arriving.
Yeah.
And who should appear?
The woman.
Yes, the woman in the photograph who the widow brings her back to her, and it's a really cheesy moment too, of like so slow motion. 'Cause
it's very Bollywoody.
So here's the thing before that I was a little bit curious about. The widow, when she's telling her friend about all this stuff of like, who is this in the photograph? She's not even pretty. I doubt she's even gone to school or done all this stuff.
And she knows damn well that she's beautiful and definitely got an education. Yeah. Yeah,
it's such a weird, catty little thing.
It definitely is. It's definitely her trying to, like, amp herself up to be like, well, I'm pretty.
Yeah.
I've been to school, when she knows, where she feels very outclassed. And I like that she starts there, because that is a theme all the way until the very end of this movie, where this other person, this other woman, on surface anyway, is like the perfect person.
Yeah, she's a projection for her insecurities.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But the widow decides to bring her back to the room because she has some paperwork, but ends up confronting her. I
mean, this is brave of her to confront someone that, like, might have been your husband's lover.
Yeah.
At a funeral.
Yeah.
With your family or what?
And
like,
just met her.
And also she's just learned that, like, this is a coworker.
Yeah.
He didn't just, like, know her from this isn't like a distant long school relationship that's no longer.
Yeah.
Like, he, up until recently, worked with her.
Yeah.
Like, actively saw her.
Up until recently, yeah, because he's dead.
Yeah, well, yes, but, like, it's not like this was my high school sweetheart, and, like, I didn't throw the photo away, I forgot, sort of thing. It's like, oh no, last week I saw her, and then I died.
But we do learn that, her husband never cheated on her. She's being assured this by the woman in the picture, but she still has her doubts.
Which is fair.
But we do also learn that they were...
they used to be a thing.
They used to be a thing, but it was more of like a college thing. And that once he met her, nothing... They were just friends again.
Yeah. And I like this version so much more than the more standard plot of like, oh, well... No, we are nothing, we never were anything.
Yeah.
Or the other option is usually like, well, yeah, but, like, he loved you. He always talked about you when we were together. No, like, they used to be a thing, now they're not.
Yeah.
I like that so much more in a drama. It feels more genuine. It feels more like a real relationship.
Yeah, like,
And that's still hard to, like, deal with.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't know that he had dated her.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it also shows that he was somewhat secretive.
Yes, and I kind of like the, like, few peeks we get into his closet, because it kind of shows that he was maybe a little bit of, like, a keep it all inside person. Yeah. All of his clothes hanging up in there are nice clothes.
Yeah.
They are all also the same color. Like, this man only wore blue shirts, and all of his stuff is very neatly placed and organized, like he was a very diligent person.
I have a lot of blue. Sorry. By the way, in case listeners don't know, we've been recording in my closet for the entire podcast.
We've upgraded, and we now have a few squares of foam on a wall.
Yes, I underestimated how many command clips I have. So I apologize if the sound's a little off this episode. We are working through it. So
we're getting there. We need to get you more clothes to add to the soundproofing.
No, I'm good. I just cleaned out the closet of extra clothes. So, but anywho, yeah. So they it is a nice little peek into his character. But
I also think that it's a little peek into his character. I also think it adds a layer of doubt to her because she is never shown. She's never wearing anything bad. But she doesn't wear nice, put-together, modern fashion clothes. Yeah, she's dressed very traditionally. Very traditionally, but also just kind of, casually. This is just... She has this top. She has these pants. She has this scarf. And this other woman that she's meeting, she is dressed to the nines. Yeah. Her husband also used to dress that way. In her head, this is building a doubt of, they would have been better together.
They would have been a power couple.
And, that's intimidating.
Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake in jeans and the Canadian tuxedos.
Yeah, power couple.
Yeah, exactly. But I also like this part because it also reveals that their marriage, at least to her, wasn't a happy one.
No, and it's revealed that this was an arranged marriage, and she only knew him 5 months. She knew him when they got married. She might have met him a little beforehand, but this wasn't we went on a date and we, their parents decided that they would be a good match, and they got married, and he was quiet and secretive the whole 5 months. Yeah. And granted, we don't necessarily, and she doesn't necessarily know, if later on in life he would have opened up more to her. Because he didn't get a chance to. Yeah, exactly. That moment's been killed. Yeah. And so, through this conversation, the two also find a little bit of camaraderie in the fact that they kind of start revealing to each other that they haven't lived the lives they wanted to because they've been living to please their family, because the only reason they got married was because her parents did, or the woman in the photograph, her parents didn't approve of him. Yes, which makes you wonder what the bar for her parents is, because we learned that he doesn't make just some money. He makes a lot of money. Yeah. He's a scientist, is how the words at the bottom of my screen interpreted it. Oh, mine didn't even tell me his job at all. They didn't give a job description. They're just he's in science. He's in a very smart academic career. He dresses really nice. He has, on the surface, a nice family. Granted, they squabble, but what family doesn't? Yeah. And so boy, this other lady's parents' bar for men must be stellar high. Yeah. There is no man good enough for their daughter. I know some people who are very much so like that. And it ends up being more so the woman's never good enough for their little son. Yes. But yeah. It also kind of shows that, they both feel this camaraderie that, they both didn't get what they want. Mm-hmm. And she feels a little bit of, this relief of, well, he didn't get to pick, and I was the pick. They picked me over, fighting to get her to marry them. Yeah, they're living the opposite lives they wanted, because it seems like she would rather be the housewife, whereas our protagonist would rather be the office worker. Yeah, and it also kind of gives that sense of, she has this, drive to be doing more and more and more, and this other girl's I've been there, I've done that, you don't want to do it alone. Yeah. I've been doing it alone. I would have been so much happier if we could have done this together. And so they bond over it. And I like the bonding from this part because it feels like a quick friendship. Mm-hmm. It feels like a strained friendship, but it feels like a genuine friendship. Yeah. And I like that little bit of tension in there because both of them are, they both feel that friendship connection, but there's still that unresolved little kernel in the back of everyone's mind. Yeah. Yeah, because from my experience and every other things I've heard is sometimes the best friendships start off as absolutely hating each other, mm-hmm. or how my God, now almost 20-year-long friendship with my buddy Joe. He was my guide for 7th grade when I first moved to Nebraska. That forced friendship. Yeah, but we ended up having a lot of interest, so it just continued from there. Yeah, it's one of those kind of things. But now we have a little bit of further turmoil brought up
because the husband left behind a house loan, which seems, upon first watch, it sounded a little bit random.
Yeah.
But now looking back on it, it's just one of the extra things of things just piling up that we're not really seeing just yet. It's just leading into that.
Yes. And I like that, like, they add layers to the responsibilities that the son had, because they hint that, like, this, it's not just like a house, it's this big house, and it houses the whole family. Yeah. And, like, granted, we have a lot of visitors staying, but, like, we've got room for all those visitors. They probably come over pretty frequently. Maybe not to this extent, but, like, there's always someone visiting. Yeah. And it's not just him and her. Like, it's not a newlywed house. This is, like, the in-laws are potentially could live here. His parents live here. His grandma lives here. Well,
and that's another cultural gap that we probably didn't really. I mean, I've known about this, but, like, because that was one of my studies in college was multi-generational households, and something I was working on.
A hot topic in the architecture world.
Actually, that's a whole other topic, but a lot of families in India tend to be multi-generational. Yeah. And it isn't just like people gathering for a funeral. A good chunk of this family actually lives here.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, like, they've also gone through the extent to, like, try and make this house not just feel like, oh, well, they just bought a house. This is, like, the house. Yeah. They don't want to move. They don't want to have to give up this house, but boy, this house was expensive.
Well, so here's the thing that I have a little bit of confusion about.
Same.
Is because in that same conversation, one, they mentioned that there's a house loan on it, and two, they mentioned that they'll still have this ancestral home.
Yeah, I was a little confused about that part as well.
What I think it is, I think this is a temporary house. Okay. Like, for that family comes and goes throughout. Like, maybe there's a core family that lives there, like the grandma who's in the bed and, like, the parents, and then family come and go as they need to, but they also have, like, a second house or something.
See, I took it as, like, they normally have part of the house, and they had just now bought the whole house, as opposed to having, like, someone else living in a different part of the rooms or something. Okay. But it was really hard to tell. They spend most of their time harping on the fact that they don't want to lose this place. They really love it, and they were really depending on their son to help provide for it.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's... Yeah, I don't know. This one would have been an interesting one to go down a rabbit hole, but...
Ran out of time.
Ran out of time, and anytime you go into stuff specifically, like, architecture-wise...
Oh, man.
It's a rabbit hole, like...
Yeah, and there's never a good answer. No. Which is frustrating, because you know somewhere out there in the world knows what the answer to this question is.
There's always an exception. You go to a city, and you look at a building, and you think in the back of your mind that our professor said you can't do that. Or and that no one would ever build that. It's like,
and yet here we are.
There's 3 of these buildings in this square. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and from this part, this is actually where we cut to the brother-in-law asking for advice. I got that mixed around. But we cut to our next little bit with the woman in the picture. Yes. They meet for... drinks and just to learn. She wants to learn more about her husband.
Yeah, they have a chit chat.
Yeah, and then we also have the little musical moment about the women bonding while the brother performs rituals and other things. Yes.
I think this musical number is nice. The music, phenomenal. Such good music for this, but also, like, it's kind of a weird balance between, like, it feels like work versus play, but it also is growth in 2 different ways.
Yeah, it's a healing of her expressing herself, being more open. Yeah. But there's, like, the weird parts of, like, them stumbling upon a couple kissing in some ruins or some shit.
I have a little bit of a theory about this. Okay. So I have a theory that, like, she has always been a little bit more uptight. Like, she's forced herself to fit into this box. And for the first time, she's finally found friends and a group that she feels fully comfortable with. And then that friend group is also finally, like, branching out and creating their own connections.
So, a couple things on that. I also think it's, well, for one, Sounds very much like the letting the hair down, taking your flip-flops off, and running down the beach.
That is, yes, that's what this song is about.
That's what this moment is.
Yes.
But it's also kind of like this little hope in her eyes that romance can continue. There's something after.
Definitely.
Because we have the very last little bit of like the cousin romance of like her just kind of observing them being sneaky.
So sneaky.
But also it's kind of a weird little addition because I was just thinking about it. It's kind of a side story Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because their dads aren't happy with each other.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of side stories if you felt like it you could go through.
Yes. And I don't want to because there are too many.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's like Skyrim.
Yeah.
And so now we have a continuation of the family trying to figure out how to get rid of the widow.
Who's gonna take her?
Just after this happy moment, because now the doorbell rings and a life insurance representative arrives to add more complications.
Yep. And does he ask for the father of the deceased man? Oh no. Does he call for the uncles of the deceased man?
No.
No.
He reads everything out in front of everyone. It's not even like a little private conversation.
No,
it's just
he like full on spills the tea that the son, the now deceased, didn't leave a penny to anybody but his wife.
Yep, exactly. And is the only benefactor. They don't even get a portion of it.
No. And I did the math, and I think the value of the life insurance policy for US dollars converts to around $67,000.
Yeah, 60.
It's not a little bit. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a fair amount.
This was a pretty big life insurance policy, and for it all to be in her name.
Yep, exactly.
Which, as they've made it pretty well clear, A, nobody really wants her.
Mm-hmm.
And B, she was definitely, like, it was definitely assumed by all of, especially the guys in this family, that they would take care of everything. Yeah. Even to the point where they didn't know how to do the thing they needed to.
It's kind of a weird transition of power. It's kind of like an unintentional usurping of the status quo.
Yeah, it definitely is, because it's also kind of interesting watching the family not just process this, but also, like, try to pretend like this was not a surprise.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is really where the uncles...
Oh, the uncles are struggling with this so
start
hard.
To be the biggest dickheads.
They are dissolving into little babies real fast.
But we also... I think this is the part that really hits home of how, like, it sucks for them, but, like, how devastating it really is, because... He really was the rock of that household. He was
not, and like, they had mentioned, like, oh, well, he was the one making the money. They've now proclaimed that, like, he was the one taking care of everything.
Yes.
They don't know how to do the house accounting. They don't know who to pay the bills to. Like, to the point where they are lost without him, but goddammit, instead of asking for help from anyone, they're going to do it. They're going to figure out a way.
Yeah. No, because, I mean, they're talking about all this shit, and then the father-in-law comes in, and it's just, or her father comes in, and they're just like, oh, we were just talking about what we're going to do next, and like...
Yeah, what we should do with her, because, you know, now she has money.
Well, no, not even with her. They're when he shows up, they stop talking about money altogether. They just talk about the future. They're like, well, we're talking about this. It
is also kind of weird, because the moms and aunts are having similar conversations in a different part of the house. No one's talking with each other to solve this. There is the uncles group, and there is the aunts and moms group. And the aunts and moms have a lot of these same worries as, like, well, we know that this is what was going on, but no one would tell us the extent. So should we be doing this and this? Like, should we be asking this person or this person? But they can't. They can't go do that. Yeah. So they're relying on these these four dudes to think this up themselves and then do the thing.
Yeah, and also that, like, the deceased had to force his father, or not really force, just encourage his father to retire early.
Yes, and they hint just, like, a little bit here or there that, like, his father retired early for his health. And, like, I had two different translations since I had it spoken in English, and then also I was reading it in English. Yeah. And so it was kind of implied that maybe his father has, like, a little bit of a high blood pressure or a heart problem.
Oh.
And so his son was like, well, why stress yourself out when you could retire and I can deal with all this?
Yeah.
And so his father was like, well, you're right, that would be better, and then I could spend more time with everyone.
Yeah.
And which is fair, but now he feels cornered because he realizes he really can't go back to work.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, who's gonna hire me at my age?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a nice look. It's not a nice moment, but it's an important moment.
It is, and it feels like a very genuine dilemma that they've set themselves up for.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, all of them are being stubborn and bullheaded about the problem, but it doesn't feel that level of bullheadedness that, like, some films put characters to, where you're like, wow, why wouldn't you just say something? Like, this feels like a problem that this is how they've always dealt with this.
Yeah.
And so why would it, like, the thought wouldn't even occur to them to, like, get the whole family together and, like, search for options.
Yeah. No, it's... Yeah, I get that. It's...
The brainstorming session was never an option.
It just makes me think of ducks. Peace was never an option.
Peace was never an option.
And so, from this part, we cut to, the widow at the picture girl's place.
And
where
boy, her place is nice.
It is very nice.
It is so modern. And then we learn it's not just modern. It has the view of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Not just over the city. It has, like, a wildlife preserve in the back.
God, what is it?
The furniture is perfect. Everything's exactly where it's supposed to be. It looks like a magazine.
It feels very much so like, oh, I'm just a blogger in New York, and I got an apartment overlooking
Times Square.
No, not Times Square. Central Park.
Oh, yes, it does feel like that. But it isn't. I like this contrast because you've seen the background of the home, and the home it's an older home. It has a lot of character, but it's clear that a lot of people share a lot of spaces. So there's decorations everywhere. Nothing really has a spot. There's a lot of digging to find things. Mm-hmm. And with the exception of the husband's closet, which was like her apartment, pristinely organized, lights came on when you opened the doors sort of closet. And you can tell that, like, this is the level of, like, living that she would really like.
Yeah.
She loves that, like, oh, you got to pick out your own decorations? You didn't get hand-me-downs from all of your relatives?
Yeah.
Wow, revolutionary.
Yeah, no, it is a nice contrast because it's, like you said, it's very modern compared to, like, we stereotypically think of, like, a traditional Indian architecture.
Yes, and you can tell, too, that there's, like, a little bit of a discord where she's saying, like, yeah, I built this all myself. Like, I picked out all the furniture. This is my apartment. Yeah. I'm the one who lived here. But, like, she struggled with trying to live with someone else when they were originally dating, because she makes a comment like, oh, you like this tea? And she goes, no, I don't like that tea. Yeah. But I still have it.
And that's the giveaway that her husband had been there before.
Yeah.
Here's my thing about this part. So when she confronts about her jealousy of, like,
yeah.
So this is a nice bed. Which side did he sleep on?
It's a little bitchy.
It is very bitchy.
Yeah.
And like, but so my thought with it is, one, she's not thinking things through. Like, she's being very irrational.
She's being very emotional.
Where, like, because I have teas and I have hot chocolate in my apartment specifically for you and other friends because I don't drink that shit. And it sits around it's been there for like 2 years now.
Old as crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And granted, like, it's also like the tea wasn't just like she opened a cabinet and noticed the tea. The tea didn't have a place. Yeah. Like, everything else in this apartment is like IKEA level put away. Except for the tea. The tea was in a spot, but it wasn't like, oh, yes, this is the tea. This is the tea spot. Yeah. It was like, oh, he left this here, but, like, this is the last thing I have from him. I don't want to throw it away. Yeah. I'll just put it on the shelf.
Well, and also this is her little bit of, like, anger finally fully bubbling over.
Definitely, because she has definitely bonded with the girl from the picture. They've definitely become friends over this time, because you don't just bring someone over to your place. that's like a mediocre friend. Like, you gotta be pretty good friends to invite someone, especially if you live by yourself. You are an American white man.
You guys all came over for movie night when I knew I had met you guys all like once.
Yes, you were an American white man.
Yeah, true.
That's also kind of a culture difference. Like, Americans are much more open to having people come over, especially if you just kind of know someone. Like, a dinner party, not that big a thing.
Oh, yeah, what was it? I was watching I think it was some English cultural shock of like, hey, come over sometime, and them actually like showing up, or it was the opposite of it or something. I can't remember.
So like having someone over is kind of a big deal. And so they've clearly become friends, but like she hasn't really given herself room to air any of the things that bothered her. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see it building up, especially in the musical numbers where she's having fun, she's finally growing, but like every time she sees her, she doesn't just see her. She sees her perfection. Yeah, her perfection and what she wanted to be for her husband. Yeah. Like, she comments on how nice her hair looks, how good her makeup is, how nice her nails are, how good her clothes are, and she's constantly judging herself against that. Yeah, because now we've started off with, the jealousy starts off with kind of a romance jealousy. Yep. And then it goes to material wealth and status. Yep. And then it cuts to, really the nitty gritty. She's jealous because she assumes that her husband was screwing her on the bed too, because even in marriage he wouldn't touch her that often. Yeah, and it's one of those things where both of them don't have an answer to it. Yeah. And I appreciate that better than like, oh well, you just didn't have time to meet him. It's an answer with no like possible ending. Yeah. Like there's always an but or I don't know to follow all of her questions about him. And the other thing too is like she doesn't actually like here's the thing is that she's not searching for answers to her husband necessarily. No. It's answers about herself and was she ever happy with the marriage, because that's the thing is she never actually sticks around for an answer. She just storms out. Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that level of like character arc, because it feels shallow when she's yelling at her. Yeah. But like we've spent so much time building up this like we still don't know anything about this guy that's dead. No. Like no answers are ever like given about who he was, what like we know he likes this brand of tea and that's it. Well, he likes blue shirts and tea. We do know a little bit from when they're talking in the cafe, because she mentions that he was better at writing his feelings rather than actually expressing them in person. Yeah, which, I mean, is a good tidbit, but, like, she, later on in the movie, goes into, like, what she was wanting out of, like, getting to know someone, and it's a stark contrast, like, what she expects and, like, what she thinks an icebreaker is to what happened for 5 months. Yeah. And that's frustrating. Yeah. I mean, and she finally gets to, like, let herself be frustrated. Yeah. Yeah, because now we have the next musical montage moment. Yes. I like that term, musical montage, instead of, like, actual musical. Yeah, it's musical montage. Yeah, because it's her taking the train back. She walks through some festival, like, defiantly, now a proud woman having that's a good point, because this part it's very much the showing, not telling portion, because it's showing now she has some confidence as she's walking through life and just whatever's around her. Yeah, she's got her head up and she's not, like, letting herself be led to the thing. She doesn't have an escort anymore. She is walking by herself. Yeah, because what cuts to next is the family breaking the oil jar and her looking over it and finally forgiving her husband. Yes. For whatever he's done. Well, he was still her husband. He was still her husband, and I also think this is the point where she's forgiving him in her mind, but by forgiving him, she's forgiving herself for having to deal with their marriage for 5 months. Well, and not necessarily that, because it also, we don't get a lot from him. No. But from her side of things, it doesn't feel like she put in as much effort as she was wanting. No, she was expecting something that she didn't have and couldn't figure out how to get. Yeah. And I think she is finally forgiving herself for letting herself be, like, led around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a moment in healing where you have to not just accept that you did a thing or you were part of a thing, but, like, forgive yourself for that bit so that you can start going forward. And this is that peak in the movie where she's going to start being herself.
Yeah, because after this, we cut to the father-in-law doing his budget work, and she comes in to try and help, but it's also a little bit too late as she realizes, like, how stuff's mounting up and how much hardship the family is going through that she's not being open to because she's self-absorbed at that point.
Yeah.
Or she's just released that self-absorption.
Yeah, and so she's helping him go through and asking, is this really how much this funeral is costing you?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, no, that's just for the 13th day. That's not the whole funeral.
Yeah.
That's just one day's worth.
Yeah, and he's like, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well...
Because that's the other thing, too. Here's why, even though he has, like, a relatively minor part in it, too,
mm-hmm.
I think my favorite character in this movie is the father.
He's a good character.
Yeah, because he is in such shock. And here's his other things, too, because, like, first the mattress guy comes and he says, I don't want your sympathy. You guys, this is your rate. This is all I'm going to pay you.
Yeah.
This is what you get.
I don't want your sad discount.
Yeah, and then same thing with the people at the Mississippi, India. I apologize.
At the river.
He's like, is there a discount for that? And that's when it shuts everyone up. And now, like, he's a little bit too prideful to say he needs help.
But at the same time, like, he doesn't want to let anyone down that he's not able to provide his son with this last full funeral.
Yeah, and he doesn't even reach out to her, like, to, hey, could you help a little bit? He doesn't even, it doesn't even come to his mind.
It is not an option, yeah.
Next, the father-in-law and the uncles, in a desperation, go to try and bribe the insurance agent. And the father-in-law is humiliated.
Yeah. And by bribe the insurance agent, they're trying to get the policy changed to one of their names. Yeah. Preferably the father's name. And the insurance agent, click-clacking away at his computer, is very blunt with them and is like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And
even is like, are you sure? Like,
they're trying
this
to,
is really what you're doing over your son's death?
Yeah, and he insults him in such a way that it finally gets to the father that he says, this is what you're doing over your son's death, and you're letting these other two do this.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of just a passive character in this scene where he's been drugged here. He's not really making any of the suggestions. He's trying to leave multiple times in this scene, and he comes home and is talking to his wife. He's like, I'm humiliated. I can never go back there again.
Yeah. Go ahead. This is also an interesting part, too, because this is his own... He's kind of the secondary character in all this, because this is his part where he breaks down.
Yes.
And where he releases his anger, justified anger at his brothers.
Oh, for sure. And it's kind of also the breaking point for him withholding information from everyone else in the house. Mm-hmm. Because he finally has to admit, like, we don't have the money for this.
Yeah.
Like, not just like, oh, we're eating ramen noodles with no water next month. It's like, we cannot pay for next month's mortgage.
Yeah.
Like, not even a little bit. We are out of money, and his wife's like, I didn't realize it was this bad. Why didn't you say something? And he's like, how could I? How could I have told you this?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very telling moment for him, and
I think it's also a telling point for the moms and the aunts as well, because they have spent this whole time letting the uncles try to deal with this. They knew something was wrong, but all of the conversation comes back to, well, how should we get rid of this and this?
Yeah.
Get rid of this person, or, they'll deal with it. They'll deal with it. We'll worry about it, but they'll deal with it. We don't want to, like, step on their toes. And now they're finally coming to an understanding of, like, you can ask for help. Yes, and I can do something, right? Like, we have other options than trying to bribe the insurance company. Yeah.
No, it's this moment where everything has broken down.
Yeah, everyone's finally at their emotional low.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a sad moment.
It is a sad moment.
Yeah. And so, now it is up to the family where they are trying to keep the money in the family as
yes.
One of the other cousins now wants to marry the widow for love.
For love. And this is the part where, like, we finally get to see how the aunties think they should handle the situation. Yeah.
Well, for starters, at this part where he says he loves her. And the grandma farting. I know,
but, like, I love the grandma. Grandma is my favorite character. We haven't mentioned her yet because she is such a minute part of this movie.
Yeah.
There is a grandmother who is, for the most part, bedridden. And she's not just like... She is that grandmother who has 20 quilts on top of her, a bonnet. We have no idea what time of year it is, but I assume it's not that cold out because no one has gloves on or a hat or anything. Like, maybe it's, like, not hot, not too cold, but she is covered in blankets and quilts.
Yeah. She's only in 2 scenes before this. She's in the... intro where we're introduced to everyone, and one of them, the guy quotes Shakespeare, and then there's the other part where the widow goes to her saying, "Hey, did my husband ever have anyone around before me?"
And she's, up until this point, to the audience, portrayed as, like, she's maybe not all there. She's so old that, like, she's just here to be taken care of. She's reached the level of, like, old Chihuahua where you just kind of have them on the bed, can't hear nothing, can't see nothing, but you let them outside and you love them anyway.
Fun fact I learned about chihuahuas recently.
Yeah.
They were supposedly originally bred to be hot water bottles.
That makes sense.
Yeah, just a live hot water bottle.
Yeah, I mean, they would be good for that.
Yeah.
And
food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why not? But, so, up until this point, Grandma, while she comes to her for emotional comfort, all of her questions she has answered herself, as opposed to, like, really relying on Grandma's response. Because Grandma shakes or nods or laughs a little bit, but you can't really tell that Grandma's, like, giving her a straight answer. But this is the part where we've finally put faith in Grandma. Grandma knows what's going on.
Yeah.
She might not be able to say anything about it, but she knows that this is bullshit.
Well, and that's why I think the fart is such a on the nose.
It is very
moment.
on the nose.
It just doesn't, for me, doesn't fit in with the rest of the movie. And
no, it doesn't.
That just might be because, like, the comedy like we've mentioned, the comedy portion doesn't read as well for us Westerners.
No, it doesn't. But I also feel like, yeah, the fart is out of place, but Grandma herself is really out of place. And every time she shows up, she is this, like, world-changing character, even though she does the most minuscule thing. She gives a little smile, she gives a little nod, a little wink here and there, and that changes how our character interacts.
Yeah. And, so, with this, too, this begins the last half hour of the movie.
Yeah.
Because this isn't the longest run of an Indian movie I've watched. This is only, like, just under 2 hours.
But it is a long movie.
There's a lot to it.
There's a lot.
This last 30 minutes of the movie are what kind of brings it down for me.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot, again.
There's a lot that we pack into this 30 minutes.
Like the beginning of the movie, there's a lot that's going to happen. So we cut to the uncles on the roof celebrating the future marriage and keeping the money in the family.
I do think this is interesting because she said yes to this, like, very quick engagement because she likes the idea of being married and she likes the idea of love.
Yeah.
And, like, she's kind of got that, like, young puppy dog hope of, like, oh, well, he said he loved me.
Yeah.
Like, she knows in her head that he doesn't love her.
Yeah.
But she's hopeful.
Yeah, there might be an inkling of love.
And you can tell who in the family has their heads on the right way because all of the uncles are like, hallelujah. Yep. She said yes. And with the exception of the mother of the son who has proposed, all of the aunties and cousins are against this.
Yeah.
It is just the uncles celebrating on that roof.
Yeah, because they've all probably been in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on top of that, of the guys who are in on everything, it's the brother-in-law.
Yes.
Because he's like, my brother hasn't even been dead 13 days, and you're already getting married to someone else? And he's like, and then there's that little weird moment of like, like, he's doing it for the right reasons, too. Because, one, he does care for her. And I think he thinks in a romantic way.
Yeah.
But she knows that he doesn't. And she's like, really? I'm your brother's wife. Like,
this is weird. No.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I like that they've both had character growth to the point where it is totally believable to me that he has always loved her.
Yeah.
But he was the younger brother.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to marry the younger brother first. We're going to marry the older brother first. And so he's the more rich, successful. He's got the job.
Yeah.
So he's going to marry her. And for those 5 months, they probably did get to know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Would have seen each other.
She taught him English, and
they've been hanging out arguably more than her and her husband.
Yeah, and so maybe there was inkling of feelings at one point, but
on his end, not on hers.
Yeah,
and I do like this though because she has seen him grow. We've made that contact, and so she knows that when he's telling her like, "Hey, this guy's scummy. I know this guy's scummy. You know this is weird. I know this is weird." She takes his word to heart much better than when her mom comes in and her mom's like, why would you do this? You didn't want to be married in the first place. Like, why did you agree to this?
Yeah, she's like, you can come back. We're sorry we even said not to.
Well, and her mom also kind of makes it sound like, well, now that you have the insurance money, we figured that this was all done and you would come home and you could be my little girl again.
Yeah. Because, like, oh, you have the money now.
Yeah, and, well, she makes it sound like it's about the money, but at the same time, I really think that this mom isn't ready for her little girl to be a grown-up.
Yeah.
Like, she either wants her married to be, that's the path in life, that's what she's always known, or she is her little girl. There is no in-between for her.
Yeah.
And so now that she's no longer a wife, she should come home and be with her mom again.
Yeah.
And she takes the news from her brother-in-law so much more to heart because her brother-in-law has proven to her that he has emotionally grown to the point where he's not just telling her something for her own good.
Yeah, and also he actually is the one who really seems like he cares the most. Like,
he really does. He's definitely got the best
he's the most level-headed of the family at this point.
Oh, for sure. And so I like her thought process because this feels like her and Grandma, who has again spoken almost no words in this movie so far. This feels like a plot that the two of them have come up together. Yeah. Because she goes out onto the balcony with her now fiancé and says, we should maybe hold off on this just a little bit. I want to get to know you. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be a long get to know you, but, we should know stuff about each other before we get married. And
that was a nice touch, too, because, very initially she's like, well, what's I don't even know your favorite color. And he's like, well, it's black. Well, what's yours? Blue. And which is a cute nod back because clearly her husband's was blue. He only wore blue shirts. Well, and it just shows that maybe there were parts to her that loved him. Yeah, she could have grown to get there. Even she couldn't express it. Yeah. And so here's another thing too that I just thought of. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason I think she makes up this story about how the woman in the photo was his secret lover. Yes. Is because it's easier for her to accept the lie that she could accept that he cheated on her because that's why he was distant, not the fact that she didn't put the effort forward. So it was easier to believe the lie than the actual truth of the situation. Ooh, a good theory. Yeah. And I mean, again, theory never actually stated, but this is one of those movies where there's a lot of self-projecting you could do on these characters, which I do like that in a drama. Yeah. And the only reason my mind is on that is because it's cults and why it's so hard to leave is because you've spent all this time. Yeah, you've put in the work. It's easier to believe the lie than accept that everything you've done up until this point was a false. Fake. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And so now is the actual final ceremony where they're all gathered around doing. I wrote it down and I'm not going back in my notes for it. The last blessing and sending him off. Yeah. Sending the sun spirit off. Cleansing the soul. Yeah. And during the ceremony, the cousin leaves in a hurry, which... Not just leaves, packs his bags and is gone. Yeah, which... Okay, there's a couple little things. I understand they're trying to be misleading, but it's such a weird part because... Yeah. It feels like they're trying to get it set up that she's leaving with him because it's also cut with her telling the grandma that, you know what I'm about to do, right? Yeah. And I know you approve of this. just doing a sounding board against her, but...
Yeah, I don't care for the pacing of this scene, because there's a lot of... We're trying to balance the calm and severity of the final funeral ceremony with this very hot-headed... He's not just packing, he is yelling, he is packing, he is stomping out of the house. Yep. This is a full drama meltdown, and we are given that with music.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a weird balance, and like I can see where we're trying to go with the like last tiny bit of suspense on what she's gonna do. I don't mind that too much. It's kind of this weird balance because I don't care about him.
No, I don't either.
If we spent a little bit of time trying to build him up to be a good guy. Like, he spends time with Grandma the Chihuahua, and he offers to help the aunts and moms, and he is shown trying to, like, hang out with the uncles, but he's never part of their group. He's not even part of the group with the aunts. He's just kind of in the house.
Yeah.
In the way. Yeah,
he's like the other cousins who are just kind of there, and they're like a side quest. This
man is a side quest man for sure. And we didn't bond with him, which is good, because, like, she didn't either.
Yeah.
But I don't care about his temper tantrum.
Yeah.
So him leaving in a fit of rage means very little to me.
Yeah.
And so the dramatic music just... It doesn't balance him, it balances her, but it's not on her.
Yeah, it's a weird...
It's a weird shift in focus for me.
Yeah, same here. Because this is the part where she's found her independence.
Yes, she's gonna go out and do her own thing.
And after she disappears, the family is now convening and wondering why the cousin left in the first place, and where he is now, and why he is in a rage.
And for the first time in this family's existence on screen, we speak to each other. Yeah,
because and I love this part. This is actually kind of it's very much an older style of comedy, because what we find out is supposedly he left because, surprise, the widow's actually pregnant and he doesn't want to deal with the kid. The kid should stay in that family. He's not going to raise someone else's.
Yeah.
But we learn because this is maybe a bit of a bad writing too, because the other little girl cousin, who's we only saw like one other time in the movie.
She's like that cousin who's like in the background, and like she's being too helpful to be part of the story. She's constantly bringing people their tea and like bringing them stuff. Bless this poor child who was forced to work at the funeral.
She comes in saying that, no, she borrowed her she's on her period. She had a menstrual pad that she borrowed. And it's like, it was her last one. And it's like,
no, that writing checks out.
Does it?
Oh, yeah. He's been dead. And like, as far as this family's concerned, that's how you check. They're like, oh, well, she's had her period. And like, when you buy a box, most people don't go through the whole box in one go.
Yeah.
So if she's on her last one, then that box lasted her a couple.
Okay.
This isn't like I bought exactly 5 pads. They come in a box of like 100.
Yeah. No,
So like, if she's finally run out, like, this isn't like news that this is the last one.
Okay. Just, alright. I just didn't see it because like, it's a leftover, so maybe she's off of it and it's her last one that she has.
No, because the cousin mentions that she's also on her period.
Oh.
So she's both on her period and running out of products.
But she says she's on her period because it's her last, or I don't know.
Yeah, it checks out, but it checks out in that like backwards, wives' tale-y sort of way.
Thinking about it too hard.
Yeah.
But I like this part because the biggest asshole uncle is like, oh no, how can you talk about this in public? You guys watch too many American Hollywood dramas. It's like...
And he's totally embarrassed by this subject. And his wife's in the background being like, this man. Oh, no.
You have children.
You know how this process works.
Obviously, I don't either, so I can't say much.
You're not a married man with children. And so the family finally talking together, piece together that she lied to him to expose him as a liar. And... Thus, his family also leaves in a bit of shame for being exposed for setting this up to try to get her money.
Yeah, and now the family goes to confront her, but she has left a letter explaining that she is leaving to be on her own. She's going to be an independent woman, but she's a strong,
independent woman who can support that family.
She is going to support them because, and here's the thing. Here's why I brought this up a little bit earlier, is because we have a couple. It's kind of this weird transition because we're thinking that the brother's going to take over. And he kind of is. She's setting him up to be like the next brother. She's like, I can't teach you English anymore, but here's a friend. Just make sure you actually type properly to them to practice your English.
Yes.
But she's now kind of going to be the temporary matriarch now, which...
Yes, I agree. I also think that this is her proving to her family-in-laws that, like, even though her time with them was short and there was a lot of back and forth on whether or not they should keep her in the family after the funeral or not, because some of the family members did argue that she should stay. Like, she's married she's family now.
Yeah.
And so she's proving to them that, like, not only does she see them as family, but she can step up into what his role was. Yeah,
she's, in a way, I guess, earning her keep instead of just being, oh, this is my son's wife.
Yeah, and I also think this is her proving to them that there is a solution to everyone's problems, and it's much easier than they were trying to make it.
Yeah.
The solution is someone needs a job, and guess who's the best qualified?
Yeah.
The one with the master's degree.
Yeah, exactly. The best English teacher.
Yeah, and we can probably assume that she met him in college, so she probably has the same degree he does.
Well...
Or it's a master's degree in something smarty-pantsy.
Yeah, it's English.
Yeah,
so.
Well, that can make you quite a bit of money.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. But
and so she's proving all that, and then on top of that, as a sign of good faith to her father-in-law, she leaves the check for the insurance money.
Yep.
So that way he's not just taking care of the bills, but this was going to pay for several bills until she can really get established.
Yeah. And it's also nice, too, because... One, she is becoming independent, but she's also not falling back on her parents. She's also proving to her parents that she's like, hey, I know you guys have issues too.
Yeah. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I like this scene too, because her mom is the standard weepy drama mom, but her dad's in the background finally taking in his wife and being like, this hurts her.
Yeah.
But my daughter's happy.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't spend any effort being like, all right, we should go find out where she is. He reads the part where she's like, I'll let you know when I move in and once I'm settled and I have a job interview. Don't even worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a nice cheesy end because
it is very cheesy.
Because she does also make up with the girl in the photograph afterwards. She's like,
yes.
She's like, I forgive you. Whatever you did, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You are a part of his life. I was the next part of his life. We can still be friends.
Yes. And it's a little bit implied that maybe photograph girl got her the job interview. Because, man, this girl got a job interview real fast. So it's a little implied that maybe she's going to go work at this very expensive fancy company that they both worked at. And she can finally have that life, too.
Yeah.
But my favorite part is her dear friend, who has been along for this bullshit journey the whole time.
Well...
she has both drugged her and been drugged to all of these things.
We've also kind of skipped over a little bit of her side quest.
Yes.
Because there's also a little bit of hope and kind of projection of the widow that she's going to find love through the neighborhood friend.
The one who keeps sneaking her Pepsi.
Yes.
Yeah, and so she's going to give her his number.
I kind of forgot about that moment in the movie where, like, the musical number of them bonding and he shows up and he's got the chips he's a sketchy watch dealer.
Yes. Snuggle in those spicy chips. And it ends on a cute little song that's much more upbeat and much more, like, R&B hip-hoppy than the rest of the soundtrack has been. Yeah. This is, like, the first, like, really modern sounding song. Everything else has been much more drama, like soulful.
It makes me think of those movies in the 90s.
They used to end on like educational rap.
Yeah, kind of, but just like the cheesy endings where it's the very much that R&B hip hop of like
it is that ending.
It's kind of like the Titanic theme song like effect where it's just like this is our theme song, but you don't know it until the very end of the movie.
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And granted, it is a good song.
It is Bollywood too.
It is very Bollywood, and this song is definitely like the most like upbeat and peppy of all of the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to talk about the music real quick.
Yeah, because since this is a Bollywood movie, the first thing we have to talk about is the reception of the soundtrack, because as we said in our first episode, oftentimes the soundtrack is the thing that brings people to the movies first.
Oh, for sure. And this one, not an exception. If anything, a good example of. So this music was received really well. Mm-hmm. People really liked it. This music was, I think this is the composer's first movie. Yes.
His name is Arjit Singh. And I know I butchered that. I apologize. But from what I looked him up, he does actually seem to be somewhat famous. He's done a lot of other stuff like solo songs. Mm-hmm. This is his first musical composition for a soundtrack.
And a lot of people were praising him for this music, not just because they liked the music a lot. A lot of people really liked this music. He released this music separately from the movie. So this isn't just a movie soundtrack. This is its own album that he released, and people really liked that. And on top of that, people really liked his level of, like, attention to the, like, emotion of the movie.
Yeah.
Which I do think he did really well. Granted, they're cheesy.
Yeah.
But, like, it's a Bollywood flick. I expect cheese.
It very much reminds me of, like, the Disney musics.
Yes. And you gotta give credit where credit's due. There is a theme that you kind of have to keep if you want the audience to like your stuff and your music. I think he did a really good job playing the different types of emotions that were going on, where we have our sad soulful, we have our independence song, we have our final coming of realization song, but they all blend together really nicely. Granted, we do have our 3 big ballads, but with the exception of the ending song, which honestly still kind of flows, there's not a moment in this movie where you're like, sure I'm missing that soundtrack.
Yeah,
like, it plays constantly. In fact, someone noted that when he released the album music is longer than the movie.
Yeah.
Like, and not by just like a couple seconds, but like by enough that he had to cut bits out of his music to make it fit the movie.
Yeah, because I mean, he probably wrote it thinking like he got like the script, and they're like, here's what it is. So he's like, okay, this is 3 pages. This song has to be 3 minutes, and then in the editing process, they cut out like a minute or so of it. So he has to rearrange around that.
And I read a few excerpts from some interviews with him about this movie, and he was really excited to be able to do like this as his debut. Mm-hmm. He approached them and was like, hey, can I be the one to write the music? And they're like, yeah, okay, let's see what you can do. Hit us with a couple of sample pieces. And his sample pieces he was so nervous about, he tried really hard to like put those to the next level. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I don't know, they're not gonna like it. And they were like, no, this is great, do this, do all of this. And so he did. And a lot of people mention that they can really feel that excitement and soul behind his music for this, and I agree. I'm probably going to listen to a couple of these songs by themselves.
This is one where soundtrack-wise, I might have to try and listen to it. It didn't really stick out to me.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, the soundtracks I'm really into are, like, Lord of the Rings soundtracks or anything Satoshi Kon's done in his movie soundtracks. But like, I mean, I thought it was fine. I'm not familiar with this kind of music for the most part, or like
it is definitely a genre.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like I've talked to my brother a little bit about like electronica music, because one of our favorite bands has started to dive into that a little bit and is like helping out. Bring Me the Horizon.
Oh, sure.
His wife released a single, and it's solid. But it's very electronica, and it's just like, and they've done some remixes of other stuff, and it's like, we feel we would appreciate some electronica if we understood it a little bit better.
Sure.
It's one of those kind of things for me where like, it's fine. It fits the movie, but it doesn't stand out to me.
Sure. This is definitely not like everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is the album. Mm-hmm. But for some people, this is going to be like, wow, these songs, so good. And, like, I have listened to the full album, and it does flow together really well. Like, this is definitely an album you can just listen to and not see the movie at all and enjoy.
Okay.
But, again, it is a select style of music. It's not like, Grandma, do you want to listen to this music? It is so good. Grandma's got to be into this sort of music.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, outside of the soundtrack, the movie has been relatively positively received.
Yeah.
Not super great, but mostly positive.
Yeah. It's middle of the road.
There was one thing I was reading that a lot of people found it similar to the a film that was the directorial debut of just another. I didn't write the director's name down.
I have it. It's Seema Pasa.
Seema Pas.
Yeah. Pawas? Not sure.
Okay. But it was a film he directed. She. I don't know. I apologize.
I looked her up because I saw this controversy and I was like, well, now I need to know.
Yeah, and a lot of foreign names I'm not good with.
I had to look at her photo.
Okay. But she directed Rampar Azad Ki Turvy? Not sure. But yeah, a lot of people saw some really strong similarities between these two movies. But she came out and said that the movie, it was a good movie. She just felt that, and she only said that the similarities were there because of the setting of the movie.
Yeah, which, that does play a big role.
Yeah, her criticism was that they took a comedic route to a more serious subject matter, which...
I feel like that's a fair criticism. Like, it's not for everyone. Dark comedy's not for everyone, no matter what level the dark comedy's at.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I completely get it. Like, my youngest brother, we showed him in Bruges, and he wasn't a super huge fan of that, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, she herself has mentioned that, like, yeah, they're a little similar, but they're different.
Yeah.
And she has no beef with it, as far as anyone can tell.
Oh, yeah. And so, I mean, for me at the end, I mean, as a Western viewer, I see this movie as kind of one of those older style movies of like a bit feminist in the empowerment of women.
Yeah.
Like it's a very old style to it.
It is. I will say it's a little less jarring than the Western like women empowerment one.
Yeah.
Because she already had the skills, like she already was a college educated woman who like expected that of herself. Which I appreciate, but it's a little on the nose. The ending especially is a little on the nose. Yeah,
and I think part of that is because we as a society have become a little bit more desensitized to that.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's seen everywhere now.
Yeah.
So it's nothing as special.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these movies we've already hit our big wave in the US for like she did it herself sort of movie. Like we've already hit our huge wave for that. So the theme itself feels dated, even if it is a brand new movie and it is set very modern. Like it doesn't feel like it has that like, oh, well, we're trying to portray a certain time period. It just feels like they made a movie from today.
Yeah.
But it's got that theme that already rings a certain bell. Kind of like how Christmas movies, no matter when you put them in, suddenly feel like they're from the 80s.
Well...
It kind of has that same vibe.
And I also think part of the reason it doesn't hit specifically for us as a Western audience is that, or me specifically, I mean, it probably could hit great with someone else, but it feels like partly like a teen drama.
Yeah, there's definitely some puppy love.
Yeah, but also for me it feels a bit daytime soap opera.
Yeah.
And that's
the extra characters.
Yes, exactly. And just kind of like the rushed end and rushed beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this would have been received a little bit better in India because of the gender role disparity in the country.
Sure.
And the class system. And it just, I think it just doesn't, for me, it's very similar to like, there's been a couple movies like this, Spirit of the Beehive and Brighter Summer Day.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, Spirit of the Beehive is an allegorical story about one of the Spanish Civil Wars and a girl's fascination and projection of the world around her onto Frankenstein.
Yes.
Or Frankenstein's monster. And Brighter Summer Day is a biopic about this incident that happened in Thailand that a 15-year-old was sentenced to life in prison for murder.
Okay.
And both of those, like, it's kind of those movies where, like, I feel they'd be more appreciated if I had a better understanding of their cultural context.
Sure. For me, this was a fun movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It's a middle-of-the-road movie for me, and I think it's a middle-of-the-road movie for me for a slightly different reason.
Okay.
So, for me, the main character, the widow, she's the one we're supposed to be following and watching her emotional growth, and while they touch on it, and it's not the worst, she feels still hollow to me. And I think part of that is because a huge portion of this movie hinges on the fact that she is capable of being a strong, independent woman. Yeah. She has this great education. She's totally capable of standing on her own feet. She could run a household herself. She doesn't need the help. She's just been crutched with it. But we don't see her being able to do that. Yeah,
here's what I also think it is, too. I think the movie is a bit too scattered.
It is a little scattered.
It covers a range of subject matters, but it covers it in kind of like this haphazard manner.
It feels like a anime movie that tried to cover a whole season and condensed it to one movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can see how this story as a whole could have been really well fleshed out, either in book format or maybe even in a TV show format where we had more time for all these side characters, especially her friend and the girl from the photo. Mm-hmm. Because with the aunts and the uncles, I don't care too much if they're a little bit shallow. I don't care too much if her mom and dad don't have a lot of screen time, because I get the gist. Yeah. But her and her friends feel like they are missing big chunks of their story. Mm-hmm. And granted, there's no more room in this movie to put them. Yeah. While the music numbers, some people would argue, aren't necessary and we could have filled that time with them, I would disagree. This is the style of the movie. Yeah. I liked those music numbers a lot. I arguably would have preferred a few more.
I actually like the imagery of a couple of them quite a bit.
Yeah,
so
like the imagery works really well, and that's the style of movie that this is. Yeah. And so to take that out would have been to remove some of that spirit from this movie. But I think this probably would have done better in a longer format. Yeah. And so for me, that's why this is a very middle-of-the-road movie. I probably would put it on, and instead of really watching it, I'd probably play some games while I watched it. Yeah. Maybe cook some dinner while I'm watching this movie. Like, it's an okay movie. I don't say, like, I would never watch it again, or if I had a friend who was really interested in it, I'd watch it with them. I don't know if I would necessarily be like, ahaha, this is the one.
Yeah, no, I am very much in the vein of, I don't particularly recommend the movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
You and I both aren't fans of romance too much. It has to be a very certain kind of romance movie. Yeah. And well, I mean, I love drama movies. That is a big staple in my in my library and my repertoire, but I don't know. It feels a little. It's a little bit of a mess of a movie. It's a mess, but it is a controlled mess.
It is a controlled mess, and honestly, if this was based off of a book, I'd be really interested in reading the book version of this. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It feels like it would be a better introspective book. It's like how when we talked about in Stephen King, Children of the Corn, when he wrote the script for it, the original rough draft script, it was too introspective. Yeah. This one is definitely one of those movies where it's
not quite enough.
Yeah, it feels like it would be one of those good books that they gave out to girls in middle school.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. This movie has the same vibes of if, like, they tried to make the Traveling Pants into a movie and it would have been, like, weird and you wouldn't have liked it, but you loved the book. This has the same vibe.
I forgot about that movie.
Yeah.
I only know it by name alone.
That's okay. It was a targeted audience, and you were not meant in that target audience. Don't worry.
I am well aware.
I wasn't even in that target audience.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, Pagllait's a fine movie. I mean, it's not great. It's nothing amazing, but it's...
If this is your genre of movie and you're like me and you've gone through everything else on Netflix, it's not a pass, but I wouldn't start with this one. Yeah,
it's something for me that I would watch to kind of round out my understanding of a specific genre.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it, where like it's a fine movie, but it's not going to be like the pinnacle of this genre that I'd recommend.
I agree.
Yeah. So, but anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace, and sorry for butchering a bunch of words.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mississippi of India.
Oh no.
I'm not wrong though. Peace.